people came from all over the world to look for gold in Ballarat. And the government here imposed a licensing fee to do so. So it was £2 for 3 months to look for gold. So that was about a week's wages. So that was all good if you had the money and were finding gold to pay that licence fee. However, if you weren't so lucky, it would have been very hard times to come up with that sort of fee if you weren't finding gold. It was also the way the government went about looking for people who didn't have a licence. So they used to call them licence hunts, and they would send the police out looking for miners who did not have a licence. So if you didn't have a licence, you'd actually be fined £5 for not having one, and you might get beaten up or you might get tied to a stump. They didn't have jails or any of that type of infrastructure. So this is what started the rebellion. So the miners tried peaceful protests, petitions. They just wanted some representation with that licence fee as well, which they weren't getting. So on the 3rd of December, on this very location in 1854, the stockade was built by the miners, and it wasn't meant to keep the miners, the soldiers out of the stockade. They were basically just saying, this is our territory. They created this flag, which angered the government greatly. They should have been flying the British flag. So on the wee hours on the 3rd of December 1854, the government actually stormed the stockade. So there were women and children within the stockade. So they literally built a very rough structure around their homes. So 22 miners lost their lives here on the Eureka Memorial Park, and 6 officers were killed as well. Now, many more people died from their injuries at the time. So that's a really, really basic overview. But my talk now is going to concentrate just purely on this flag. So this is the flag that the miners created in 1854, an absolutely huge flag, as you can see. Now, if we had it all there, it would actually measure 4 metres by 2.6, and the flag was actually sewn to the backing board, keeping it all in place. Very, very fragile artefact. And we currently have the flag on loan from the art gallery, so they are the actual owners of the Eureka flag. So at the battle here on the 3rd of December...
The Victorian Art Gallery, the national...
No, it's never left Ballarat, so the Ballarat Art Gallery.
Sorry.
No, all good. So in 1854 on the 3rd of December in the wee hours of the morning, a battle occurred here, and one of the troopers, one of the government guys there, actually tore the flag down at the battle. So Trooper King did the damage to the flag mainly when he first tore it down. Now, Trooper King and his family actually kept the flag for 41 years in their own personal possession. So from the moment it was torn down, Trooper King actually started ripping and tearing pieces off and giving it away as mementos to other officers. However, the souveniring continued that whole time, the whole 41 years that they had the flag, they were still tearing it apart. Now in 1895, so 41 years after the rebellion, the King family actually tried to sell the Eureka flag. So they approached several museums in Melbourne who all declined. They didn't actually believe that this was the real thing. So that was great for Ballarat. So they contacted the Ballarat Fine Art Gallery here and offered it to them on loan initially. So did they want to have it on display, which they did take up. So the King family actually wrapped it up in some brown paper and popped it in the mailbox, and that's how it got to the art gallery. So we're very blessed that it actually got to its destination. Now, in its very early life on display at the art gallery, very crudely displayed. So it was just simply laid out on a trestle table. You could go, you could have a touch of the flag. They didn't seem to mind too much. And there was a man who stood guarding it to make sure no one walked out the door with it. However, if you were very nice to him, he too was still ripping off pieces and giving the mementos away. And the souveniring of this flag actually happened right up until 1963, so over 100 years after the rebellion. So we currently only have 60% of the flag. So 40%, sadly, out there forever. And much of it was probably thrown away, sadly. I mean, if you were to go through one of your relatives' belongings and just came across a blue or a white piece of material, if there was nothing to say what it was, could have been thrown out a piece of the Eureka flag. So we're always on the hunt for remnants, not to put it back together but just to show on display. Now our last little piece of flag that came forward was in 2014, so for the 160th anniversary of the flag. And a man had discovered a piece of the flag in his great aunt's belongings. It was attached to a little postcard that actually said on the back, the Eureka flag. So we send anything that comes forward off for testing to make sure it's exactly the same type of fabric, which this little piece was. And the man actually sold it at auction for $36,000. So just to put it in perspective as to money-wise, what this would be worth. As I say, that was just an inch square piece of Eureka flag. Now the flag is said to have been designed by a Canadian miner by the name of Charles Ross, who saw the stars of the Southern Cross, and that is what it is designed on. So the blue is for the night sky, the cross is for unity, people coming from all over the world just wanting fairness and a fair go under this one banner, and the 5 stars of the Southern Cross, although they've placed them symmetrically instead of how we see the stars. And I'm sure that was just an easier way to do it, to put a star each end and 3 down the middle. Now it's made of 3 different types of fabric. The blue is a cotton, a very lightweight cotton, very similar to what the miners would have worn as shirts. The cross is a cotton wool blend, and the stars are made completely of wool. So you'll notice through the cross and the stars there's lots of small holes, and unfortunately that's actually insect damage. So when the King family had it all that time, it was probably kicked into a cupboard, the rebel flag, not loved at all. So unfortunately, through time, it's very much degraded colour-wise, and as I say, the insects and moths have eaten it away, which is a little bit sad. Now the flag is said to have been made by 3 of the miners' wives, and we do tell that common story in the museum. However, our plaque that's always been with the flag actually says unknown. So nothing has ever been proven that it was those 3 ladies. I've worked out here now for 13 years, and I would have met 100 people who have told me their relatives made the flag. So it would be wonderful, wouldn't it? So a lot of the history here is verbal, so it does change slightly through the years. Some people actually believe it may have been men that made the flags, a lot of sailors and tailors, very good sewers. There's other stories that there was an existing church flag that was blue with a white cross, and perhaps they added stars to an existing flag. The stories go on and on. So one of the ladies said to have assisted was not even in Ballarat at the time, so we're not actually sure how she helped, but it may have been months in the making. The other part of that story is, it is said this flag was made overnight. So yeah, huge flag, huge. And my question has always been with that, where did they lay the fabric out to cut it? It's so big, they were doing this in secrecy. And that's another reason why we don't actually know who made it, because they wouldn't have said back in the day. They would have gotten a huge amount of trouble for making the rebel flag. So we replicated this flag for one of the anniversaries many years ago, just to see how long it would actually take us to make the same thing. So we sourced the closest fabric possible from the UK, closest thread count possible. We did exactly the same size stitching. We had 150 people who joined us as a community project, and we signed in and out. So you had half an hour in which to have a sew. In my half hour, unfortunately, I got about that far with my sewing. But we tallied up all the minutes to see how long did it actually take us. And it took us 9 days to make the same thing. So they were fabulous sewers back in the day, so I'm sure they could have, made it much faster. But again, there's nothing in writing to say how long it actually did take. The other part of the mystery is also that some literature states that it was on an 80-foot pole. So that's a huge tree, an absolute huge tree. There would have been many trees that big, I'm sure, but again, a question that I've always had is how did Trooper King get it down so easy if it was so far up in the middle of gunfire? So again, another little part of the mystery. Now when you actually leave today, the flag we fly on the huge pole outside, that's about 80 foot, and the flag on top of it is exactly the same as this one, so 4 metres by 2.6. We did in fact fly a replica on a 30-foot pole, and there are images in the museum which I can show you what it actually looked like. And comparing it to artwork back from the day, it looks more like it would have been 30 or 40 feet instead of 80 foot. But again, we have no facts on that at all. Now, does anyone want to ask any questions at this stage?
Yeah. The points on the star, there are 8 points.
Ooh.
Do they represent anything?
Good pickup. No, well, to make an 8-pointed star, there's quite an old way to make an 8-pointed star. So if you take a circle and fold it in half again, and one more time, so you end up with a cone shape. When you cut a triangle out of the base and unfold it, you get an 8-pointed star. So that's exactly how they did it. I can show you, when I go back up to the front desk, if anyone wants to see, I can actually show you how they did it. So that's exactly how they did it. And why they're a little bit rough too. I mean, you know, they were trying to make the flag very quickly.
And where was it hung? Was it in the stockade then, relative? Like on the...
So we first flew at Bakery Hill on the 29th of November, where they had a big mass meeting in protest over the licensing system. But yes, it last flew here. It only actually flew for 5 days. So yes, it flew somewhere on this site. We don't know exactly where on this parkland the stockade was. Very contested.
And what do the 8 points on the stars represent?
Just an easy way to make a star. Yeah. So they have no relevance to... A lot of people think states or that type of thing, but no, just an easy way of making a star.
So there hasn't been any diaries or anything that have been found or anything?
Oh, there's lots of literature, but lots of different versions. So there's nothing, no two sort of pieces of literature that, you know, can pinpoint, as I say, the makers or exactly where it was. There's so many different versions, so, but it keeps the story alive, you know. As I say, the people I've met, some of the people that tell me their relatives made the flag, that's the story in their family, and that's been passed down. So true or not, you know, we just don't know. So